I wanted to spend a little bit of time thinking about Samuel Paty, because I think the reaction to what happened in France was a kind of the reverse of what you'd expect. So, a teacher teaching youngsters in school about freedom ends up dead, murdered brutally, because people thought that he was a legitimate target because of the way that they understand their religion, or at least some aspects of it. And in response to that, you have this unbelievable gulf of sort of interpretation of it. So the French state, quite rightly, stood up and decried this attack on their own beliefs and values, the values that we all share. But across the channel, a few miles away, nothing, absolute silence, as if actually stand up and say that freedom is something to defend, and freedom is something that you need to be proud enough about to educate young people about it in the classroom, is actually inviting violence. It's actually the problem itself. And that kind of defensiveness that we've seen in relation to this, I think, is absolutely abhorrent. There's total silence from the educational community in this country in relation to this act, which is just almost utterly unbelievable that something like this could have happened. It just leaves me cold. I've wanted to be someone who's stood up very, very clearly for freedom of expression, and to show that for young people in this country, the ability to have that freedom to express yourself and to say whatever you wish is a cherished value that few of us think about that often, except for when we lose it. And to see such a blatant attack on freedom of expression take place a few miles away from us in such a way that you've hardly credited that it would be possible. Somebody is butchered for trying to educate young people into the need to understand what freedom means today, I think should have got a massive reaction from everybody in the education field in this country, but it didn't. It's absolute silence was the response. So I think what we need to do is be clear that never mind the absolute idiots who carried out this act. It's the notion of freedom itself has been undermined severely, and that is something that we need to find every way possible to defend. And I don't mean that it's just about the incidents around Charlie Hebdo and the cartoons against Muhammad and the whole idea of blasphemy. I think it's freedom of expression per se that is utterly undermined. We're now second guessing constantly what we should or shouldn't say. So for instance, if I'm to try to sort of explain what our values to young people, so that's part of what we're supposed to do. It's part of what we are supposed to do according to the government's interpretation of the school curriculum. We're supposed to explain what British values are to young people. And yet one of them, freedom of expression, is completely undermined. As a teacher in a classroom, an ordinary teacher, thinking that you should somehow be able to delve into that issue, I think you'd be extremely worried and extremely frightened of the consequences, not necessarily because somebody's going to attack you directly, but because you are going to be seen as invoking a kind of reaction like that, kind of hostility. And, whether it's called Islamophobia or whatever it's called, that is the sort of response that is now part of the makeup of how we view discussing something as fundamental as free speech and freedom of expression. And so it becomes now almost impossible to think that is a value that we can accept and put forward without really trying to say that we've got to somehow stand up to the rejection of that value, the rejection of those values by a broad sweep of people within education. The idea that there is a free exchange of ideas and that there is the ability to encourage young people to take up whatever views they want, which is, the way that I would see it, is very much now stamped on. I just think that what we need to do is encourage people within the education sphere to really reassert we need to stand up for freedom of expression at all opportunities, defending the heroic efforts of people in the classroom who've done that and suffered the consequences. I think is something that we should all stand behind.